Israel emerged from British imperialism, a group of basically secular Jews in Eastern Europe. Britain, during World War I, promised Palestine repeatedly to different groups. It promised the land of Palestine to the Arabs, then under lobbying pressure of British and American Zionists, announced that there should be a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Remember, this was not even British land. This was Ottoman territory.
There is this push to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, which would require destroying the third holiest place in Islam, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's imminent that mosque would be blown up. Do you fear that?
They don't even count how many people they're killing. So, yes.
I am a Reva, and I was taught how to pray Salah.
That means every single time I pray,
the person who told me gets the reward.
5 times a day, from Fajr to Isha.
If you want to support someone like me in learning Salah,
then sponsor 10 people for just £100. Remember the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, charity does not decrease wealth. Click the button and donate now.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. If you're watching this video and it's Salah time, please pause it and go pray and come back when you're done. Please check out the description section of this video to support the channel. I just watched a fascinating discussion between Tucker Carlson and Jeffrey Sachs, where Professor Sachs gave Tucker a comprehensive breakdown as to why there is no valid political, legal, historic, religious or moral basis for the formation of Israel. Mr. Sachs listed off undeniable facts basically proving Israel is a fake country based on lies, trickery, brutal oppression and land stolen from Greater Palestine. Let's watch the first clip.
What Netanyahu and his coalition represent is a claim that is called Greater Israel. And the claim is that Israel will control all of the lands that were the British Palestine. Britain, after World War I, took imperial control over Palestine. As usual, Britain left a disaster. This is Britain's way in the world. And instead of a Palestinian state for the 8 million Palestinian Arabs and a Israeli state for the 8 million Israeli Jews, what Netanyahu and his coalition want is that Israel controls all of the land, including, therefore, half the population that are Palestinian Arabs. Of course, they want to expel them. They're very clear about that. They want them out. They want an Arab-free land of Israel. It's unbelievably violent and destructive. Netanyahu came to the United Nations last week, and he was very clear for any of these defenders of Israel in the United States. Netanyahu said there will never be a state of Palestine. Now, are we really signing up to that? Because that's signing up to mass war crimes, to genocidal actions, and to perpetual war for the United States. The whole vast majority of the world says, of course, there needs to be a state of Palestine. Are you kidding? There are 8 million Palestinian Arabs. What else is there going to be? The International Court of Justice says this. The UN General Assembly says this. The UN Security Council says this, except the United States government, which says, no, we protect Israel in this murderous path that they're on.
It's remarkable. It's nauseating to me and shocking to me that any Christian could support this.
I happen to be Jewish. I'm aghast at what Israel is doing. And to say that it's anti-Semitic to oppose a genocide or to oppose all of these wars that Israel is provoking is obviously a big lie. When one understands the history of Israel and the history of Zionism, religious Jews were against Zionism at the start. Yes. This wasn't even a Jewish religious movement at all. This was a group of basically secular Jews in Eastern Europe. And the rabbis of the day told them, no, don't do this. This is a bad idea. This is not what Judaism is. This is just going to create a tremendous amount of trouble. Israel emerged from British imperialism. Actually, the modern Zionism, so-called, which was the idea of creating a Jewish state, was a British Christian idea in the 19th century. It did not start as a Jewish idea. It was a British Christian idea. In a Jewish tradition of 2,000 years, Jews were to live anywhere, and they were to make their faith anywhere at their local synagogue. They didn't have to be anywhere in particular. There was no land idolatry. There was just a set of religious and ethical tenets. That was it. And there was not only no mass call to have a Jewish state, that was viewed as heretical. One of the guiding texts of religious Judaism, the Talmud, says, don't return to Israel en masse. Don't, because it'll just create trouble. Live peacefully where you are. That's actually a Talmudic injunction that the rabbis followed for a couple thousand years, basically. So this whole idea of the modern state of Israel was actually a Christian idea,
Yes.
specifically a British Christian idea. And it was an Anglican reverend who kind of gave this idea to Theodor Herzl, who was a secular Jew in Vienna in the last years of the 19th century.
As Jeffrey Sachs said, Netanyahu's plan to form Greater Israel includes stealing all of colonized Palestine. As Professor Sachs pointed out, despite there being just as many indigenous Palestinians as Israeli settlers in historic Palestine, which is now known as the stolen country of modern Israel, Netanyahu wants to violently expel 8 million Arab Palestinians from their own land, leaving only his fellow European Jews to dwell there. And to be accurate, there is a small sprinkle of Jews from other parts of the world that reside there also, but that doesn't change the fact that they're still not native to Palestine. Mr. Sachs was correct when he said anyone supporting Netanyahu's blatant land theft is supporting mass war crimes, genocide, and endless conflict in the Middle East. Tucker, like any normal human being, was both shocked and sickened to hear this. Jeffrey Sachs, as a Jewish man, highlighted how there is no religious ruling in Judaism that allows the Israeli regime to commit the atrocities they're committing. And not only that, he made it clear that on a religious basis, European secular Jews were not even permitted to mass migrate to Palestine and form Israel in the first place. Jeffrey also made the claim that according to his faith, the ideology of Zionism is sinful, and that opposing Israel is not anti-Semitic is actually the most moral position to take. So not only is Israel built upon sin, it is built upon British imperialism, Jewish supremacy, and Zionist extremism, as Jeffrey Sachs stated. Let's roll the next clip.
In 1917, Britain did a typical British imperial thing. During World War I, it promised Palestine repeatedly to different groups. Britain is nothing but deceitful in its imperial methods. So it promised the land of Palestine to the Arabs. It promised the Middle East to be divided with the French in what's called the Sykes-Picot Treaty. And it then in 1917, under lobbying pressure of British and American Zionists, announced in what's called the Balfour Declaration that there should be a Jewish homeland in Palestine after World War I. Remember, this was not even British land. This was Ottoman territory. But Britain, being the British Empire, said, we're going to determine the fate of this, and announced in the Balfour Declaration that there should be a Jewish homeland. Now, there was one Jew in the British cabinet in 1917, Edwin Montagu. What was that one Jew's reaction? It was to oppose strongly, strenuously, the Balfour Declaration. What did Montagu say in a famous letter? He said, why are you doing this? We don't need a Jewish homeland. Jews are a religion. They're not a nation. They don't need a nation. And if you do this, you make me seem like I'm not British. I am first British. Thank you. I happen to be Jewish, but I'm British. And if you say that now, oh no, the Jews are in the state of Palestine, that's where their homeland is, you're going to make it seem like I'm less British. And this is how many people have felt over time. And I, as an American, completely, totally resent when Netanyahu says we're the state of the Jewish people. Nonsense. It's revolting. I happen to be Jewish, but Israel is not my state. The United States is my state. And it's revolting to be told otherwise. Who the heck is he to tell me this? Who the heck is the Israeli government to declare such a thing? Complete nonsense. And so the history of all of this is completely different from what is thought. And the claim that it is anti-Semitic to be against the ghastly things that Israel is doing, stopping food shipments into Gaza to starve people, destroying all of the infrastructure to make Gaza a place of 2 million people unlivable, murdering people, the significant majority of whom are women and children. And then to be told, no, you can't say you're against that. This is a preposterous propaganda. And the extremist Zionism of Netanyahu and his cronies, who are murderous, this is an extremism that is completely disgusting.
Professor Sachs spoke about how colonial Britain promised Palestine to numerous people in the early 1900s, despite it not being their land to give away in the first place. Mr. Sachs labelled the British imperialists deceitful and exposed how Zionist lobbyists over 100 years ago had the same grip over Britain and America as they do today, demanding a Jewish state in Palestine after World War I. That is crazy. They planned to steal Palestine way before the Second World War. So the European Jews going there wasn't out of desperation. It was always a well-planned mafia-style land grab. The process was just accelerated after World War II. Jeffrey Sachs claimed non-Zionist Jewish people were opposed to the formation of Israel due to Judaism being a religion whose people don't need a nation, and because they didn't want to lose their European and American identities by moving to the Middle East. Mr. Sachs himself also rejected the premise of a so-called Jewish homeland, even going as far as calling it revolting. He showed just as much disdain towards the Israeli government's sense of entitlement for claiming such a preposterous notion could be true. I respect Jeffrey Sachs for refusing to allow the Israeli regime's Zionist extremism, which includes the starvation and mass murder of innocent people and total destruction of civilian infrastructure, to represent him in any way, shape, or form. Let's watch the next clip.
I think one of the reasons that religious authorities in Europe at the time of the Balfour Declaration, some of them thought this was a bad idea, is because, the point of being in the land of Israel, biblically, was because the temple was in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount, right, where Abraham brought Isaac. And that was the center of the religion until 70 AD when the Romans destroyed the city and the temple. And now, and then subsequently, of course, the rise of Islam, Al-Aqsa Mosque, third holiest place in Islam, was built on that site. And the foundation is called the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall, that all our politicians go to. The question of rebuilding the temple is almost never discussed publicly in the United States, but there is a huge effort, by the way, bankrolled by a lot of Christians, just to be completely clear, in the state of Texas, for example. There's a whole foundation, a number of foundations designed to abet this. But there is this kind of behind-the-scenes push to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, which would require destroying the third holiest place in Islam, the mosque, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I've talked to a bunch of people about this who think that it's imminent, that it's not crazy to think that that mosque would be blown up in order to make way for the third temple. Do you fear that? If that happens, what happens next?
Well, the extremism on display in Israel is, as I said, the most lawless in the world today. Israel is the rogue state of the whole world. Israel flagrantly violates every limit. Israel goes to war where it wants to. It murders foreign leaders where and when it wants to. It acts with complete impunity and disdain. And Netanyahu thinks that he controls, and maybe he does, the U.S. government, so that whatever he does, he thinks he can get away with. So there's no doubt that there is a third temple movement that is part of this coalition. No doubt that there are people in this government who have absolutely no limit, who talk openly about, they've already said, to make Gaza completely uninhabitable and unlivable. That is ethnic cleansing or genocide or a combination of the two. Such people do not have limits. Even the ancient history of Israel, many people then and today did not think it was the greatest idea to rebel against the Roman Empire. Yes. The Jews ended up destroying themselves. They champion a mass suicide in a place called Masada. To have a belief system where you're championing mass suicide is a little weird. Maybe the behavior wasn't so prudent. Yes. Maybe it wasn't so wise to be as completely extremist as you thought. And it's not so wise for Israel to be completely extremist and disdainful of every other place in the world. If you ask me, are there forces in Israel that could do this? Absolutely. There are those who would do it tomorrow. This is a coalition government that caused Trump to say that annexation is impossible because they were on the verge of essentially annexing the Palestinian lands of the so-called West Bank, completely against international law, completely against UN Security Council resolutions, completely against the International Court of Justice, completely against reality, because it's millions of people living there that they would have to murder or ethnically cleanse or completely suppress, which apparently they're ready to do for all of them, because they say these are all hateful people, and they don't even count how many people they're killing, in fact. So, yes, of course they're ready to do what you said.
Tucker Carlson brought up a great point when he said religious authorities in the early 1900s, which included Christians and Jews, thought it was a bad idea to form the phony state of Israel due to the Romans destroying the temple in Jerusalem nearly 2,000 years beforehand, and especially with Al-Aqsa Mosque being built there by Muslims around 1,300 years ago. I was unaware that what remains of that temple is the Western Wall in Jerusalem, where all American politicians are forced to go to in order to pledge allegiance to their Israeli masters. Tucker made the shocking revelation that there is a huge effort bankrolled by Christian Zionists to blow up Al-Aqsa Mosque and rebuild the temple. As Tucker said, Al-Aqsa Masjid is the third holiest site in Islam. For anyone to destroy it would be a disgusting act of terrorism, and any temple built in its place on the back of that would be in worship of Satan, not God. What's scary is that both Tucker Carlson and Jeffrey Sachs feel like such a horrific act of extremism is not just likely, but that it will happen soon. Jeffrey Sachs described Israel as a lawless rogue state and a global threat, listing off their assassinations of world leaders, illegal espionage operations, and how they control the US government through bribery and blackmail. Professor Sachs correctly made the claim that the ethnic cleansing and genocide in Gaza and the West Bank proves that there are no limits to the evil the Israeli government is capable of. Mr. Sachs also claimed that historically the downfall of the Jews of that era, when they lost their temple to the Romans, was due to them having the same reckless supremacist and arrogant extremist outlook as the Israelis have today. Let's watch the last clip.
Since 2002, there has been what is called the Arab Peace Initiative, which has said that based on two states, there would be normal relations between the Arab countries and Israel. In other words, normalization and peace based on a state of Palestine alongside the state of Israel. It has been supported nonstop by what's called the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which is the 57 Muslim majority countries of the world. They say, yes, normalization. Two states. Israel stops its rampage. Israel stops its delusions of greater Israel. Israel stops its ethnic cleansing and murder of the Palestinian people. Then there can be peace. It's not even hard. This is what the whole world says. Now, the United States has used its muscle, its dollars, its threats, even giving visas. It denied visas to the Palestine Authority to come to the United Nations last week to be part of the debate about this issue. It wouldn't even grant visas because the U.S. has been so in lockstep protecting this extremism up until now. And everything that's said, that this is anti-Semitic, that there's no one to talk to, that there's no possibility of peace, it's all lies. About 155 countries formally recognize Palestine. President Trump should say, along with that there will be a state of Palestine so there can be peace. And that he hasn't said because of all of the forces of Israeli control over the White House and Congress. He hasn't said what virtually all the rest of the world has said. If he says it, there will be peace. Palestine, which is recognized by more than 150 countries, applied 14 years ago for membership in the United Nations. So 14 years ago in 2011, Palestine made its application, and the Committee of Membership said, yes, Palestine has all of the attributes of statehood. It has a permanent population, that's the Palestinian Arabs. It has boundaries, which are the legal boundaries of the 4th of June, 1967, not the boundaries of Israeli illegal occupation, but the legal boundaries, 4th of June, 1967. And it wants to enter the UN as a UN Charter abiding country. Those are the criteria. So the membership committee said, yes, of course, Palestine qualifies. At the time, what did the U.S. government do under Obama? Well, Obama was under complete Israel control, like all of American presidents are. And so he said to the Palestinians, no, don't push so hard. You'll get it very soon. But right now, just ask to be an observer. You don't have to be a member. So the Palestinians listened to the wonderful president of the United States, and they took observer status. Of course, there was no follow-up. This is the endless charade of Israel and American politics. Israel dead set against a state of Palestine, the U.S. doing whatever Israel says. And so it didn't come up again until last year, 2024. And then waiting 13 years and suffering a genocide, the Palestinians reapplied. Since they already had the decision of the membership committee, it went straight to the UN Security Council. What happened in the UN Security Council? This is under Biden. Of course, they vetoed statehood. Not only can President Trump stop annexation of the West Bank, as he said he intends to do, bravo, he could also make a state of Palestine within about 10 minutes and lift the U.S. veto, and there would be a unanimous vote of the UN Security Council, and Palestine would enter as the 194th UN member state. And on that basis, Israel would have to withdraw because Israel would then be in a fight with the whole world, which it can't be in. So this is quite straightforward. If we want to make peace, it's absolutely possible. If we want to follow Israel, we are following the path of perpetual war.
Jeffrey Sachs outlined how Israel's psychopathic conduct, backed up by America, is the only reason there is not peace in the Middle East. As Professor Sachs said, this all hangs on the balance of the formation of a Palestinian state, with 57 Muslim-majority countries being willing to compromise on what is essentially Arab land that does not belong to Israel just to make peace. Jeffrey was right when he said that it's not only Islamic nations. 155 countries around the world recognise Palestine and are pushing for a peaceful outcome, which is once again being sabotaged by the Israelis with the backing of the US. I wasn't surprised to hear how the American government has frozen out the Palestinian Authority, or how various presidents, from Obama to Biden and now Trump, have vetoed Palestine regaining their independence as a sovereign country on what's left of their land. And as Jeffrey Sachs said, if Donald Trump was a man of honour, he would overturn this decision, resulting in Palestine becoming a recognised state almost instantly. But the fact that he's not willing to do that exposes him for the compromised charlatan and coward that he is. Jeffrey Sachs spoke nothing but facts and figures here. So how can anyone after hearing this say with a straight face that Israel isn't a force of evil and a completely made up fake country? Thank you for watching. Make sure to join my free Telegram group via the link in the description. And remember to like, subscribe and become a channel member for access to exclusive content. Until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah.